One. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, side government can't have their cake and eat it too. They have to choose a frame and operate within that. Opening government correctly says that a plurality of ideology is important and the extent of being closed-minded is bad, and I agree with them. Closing government, to some extent, shoots their bench in the foot when they literally mechanize a mechanism of people protesting and being angry, and as a consequence, challenging those structures. The question I have, and I'm glad to answer this in POI engagement, is if this radicalization of the far left was so bad, then we would have echo chambers of circle jerking. But as what Miguel successfully has demonstrated, people protest, and as a consequence, people are able to make a decision about those extreme views. But let's be charitable to closing government. What they're trying to say is that maybe these protests just end up as protests. Maybe it's just civil disobedience. Maybe people end up just going ha, ha, ha. But as what we see really happens, these uniquely become a starting point of change wherein a lot of these leaders in those student groups end up going to things like Sangguniang Kabataan, end up even becoming congressmen and senators later on, and end up using that very start of a protest to be able to forward the change and capacity amidst what government proves is a very radical kind of world. The extension and round-winning case coming from CO is very simple. We tell you that the antithesis to all of those things are things we see in status quo, and that are a plurality of ideology and people freely being able to move along the spectrum to be able to have more nuanced discussions about what they want. Andre's POI was interesting because opening opposition did talk about how liberal ideologies are cool and good, and I agree. But my extension subsumes that, wherein I told you the whole fucking political spectrum expands, even the conservative side of it. That's why in my numerous rebuttal and POIs earlier in the round, I'm kind of explaining how a lot of these conservatives are then pushed to also improving their messaging. My thought experiment here is simple. If the radicalization of the far left was so extreme, then why did we still see people like President BBM and Donald Trump from the conservative Republican side rising up and running away with a lot of these elections? That goes to show that to a large extent, these conservative values are still able to proliferate within society. It's not just about these liberal stuff becoming better and being good, and this ultimately improves and breaks the deadlock of discourse. Because discourse uniquely happens when you're able to see the bad parts of all of these things. It's the Sheng Wu intuition that every time these crazy cancel culture feminist bitches raise their ugly head in public, you're able to say, as what opening government said, cancel culture, and people who are debaters, people who are exposed to these ideologies, can then make a judgment call about cancel culture. They can improve the messaging, improve the attack, as opposed to just shouting louder. These people, because of this very radical perspective, are able to see the counterfactual and other side of the coin of a lot of these radical and liberal particular stances. Yeah, go ahead.
With these liberally dominated universities in which everyone's taught that these liberal things are good and bad, can they really see these radical issues within their own movement as something bad when it's something that's ingrained into them as something good?
Yes, it's because the point in which they start feeling the bad effects of it, like they lose a lot of their conservative friends, or people from conservative think tanks calling them out and engaging in discourse, like releasing certain statements, and even in UA&P, for instance, a conservative institution, before releasing a statement about the burial of President Marcos in Libigan ng mga bayani. So a lot of these exercises of choice actually still happen amidst the backdrop of that. I challenge the lens of Kool-Aid that you're trying to portray, and we think that a lot of the pushback from these particular people, whether they're from the moderate camp, the liberal camp, or the conservative camp, do portray a particular sense of discussion. Don't get me wrong, this discussion can be messy, it can be hostile, it can be toxic. But ultimately, as what my partner mentioned, people and young people from universities are less afraid. And that is the unique rallying cry that actually happens ironically, even if you have such a strong push from the other side. That uniquely happens when people are able to, as what my partner said, expand the Overton window and become even more and more nuanced to the realities. Why does closing opposition take this debate? Number one, we take it above opening government because we engage with the reality and metric and we're able to solve it. In fact, CG extension solves OG problem, and we're able to call out, because of CG extension existing, you're able to have these more nuanced worldviews. Why do we take it above opening opposition? Because opening opposition is correct to establish a sense of urgency and talk about, as they say in the POI, cool things about liberalism, which I agree, but I expand that and tell you it's because of the bad sides of liberalism that you're able to see, you're able not only to challenge that perspective, but even make the Conservative Party have to work harder, which is exactly what they did to be able to run away with the election, and that's exactly why we still have a strong presence of religion in the Catholic Church amidst, as what you say, a very radical and liberal agenda. So for all of these reasons, people are able to choose their capacities, make better choices, and as a consequence, allow more flexibility for the choices they want. We are very proud to oppose.